Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're talking about, we're going to watch actually Asha Sharma's roughly like 15-minute interview with Bloomberg. This was literally, this was roughly about a day ago, and yeah, we're looking at like the first 100 days of Asha Sharma with what she's done and how she kind of still sees the business going forward. And there's some really good questions in here, so this is why I want to show you, but I'm not going to be really breaking this up too much. I'm going to leave this in its entirety for the interview because I feel it provides a better feeling of Asha Sharma with how she sees the business. I think breaking it up would not have necessarily the same effect, wouldn't be as genuine. So that's why I want to share the whole thing. Let's go.
Okay. You're 100 days in.
100 days in.
It hasn't been uneventful.
You
haven't wasted a second.
It's been wild.
Gamers have gone from saying you were going to kill Xbox to putting your face on Jesus memes. How would you describe the first 100 days?
You know, there is nothing that can prepare you for, taking on a new role in a new industry, being a first-time CEO, and having hundreds of millions of people having an opinion about you without ever talking to you. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's been wild. I think it's been wonderful. I think it's been weird, and everything in between. But for my first 100 days, I really just wanted to learn and listen. I felt like my first job as CEO of Xbox was just to understand the soul of Xbox, to understand the soul of what makes art, to understand the soul of creating, understand the soul of the platform, mm-hmm. and kind of what made us great for the first 25 years.
That already right there of just what is Xbox already is way more than what a lot of other suits and CEOs are doing right now in the gaming space. And I appreciate that so much because that tells me she's not seeing it just as a business. Of course, she is there to make a business better. Yes, that is her job. But as first-time CEO, she's slightly a little bit older than I am by like 18 months. And while she doesn't necessarily play a lot of games, I think it's wonderful that she kind of has that attitude. Okay, she knows she doesn't know very much, so she's going in to learn and then going to come up with a plan going forward. And she's already made some changes that have greatly benefited a lot of players.
You were a surprise pick for CEO. Phil Spencer, your predecessor, 20-year veteran, super passionate fan base. You're not a gamer, came from Instacart, Meta, Microsoft AI. Tell me about that call from Satya. How surprised were you?
Yeah, I would say no one was probably as surprised as I was when I got that call. I didn't know he had the right person on the line, but...
Did you try to talk him out of it?
I tried to understand it. Look, like it's one of those things when we're all every day working on an AI, it's hard to see past it, right? We started with a model launching every 6 months, and now it was launching every 6 weeks and every 6 hours in some cases. And so it took a moment to just pick my head up and say, what is this all about? And then you see, oh gosh, over 1 billion people play on Xbox every single year. 70% of Americans spend at least 1 hour every single week gaming. And all of my career, I've picked the things that I worked on because I deeply cared about the thing that I was going to go solve with technology, whether it was helping to make sure that every single retailer would have a chance to fight against Amazon with Instacart, or private communication and preserving that and protecting that all around the world with messaging, mm-hmm. Or helping people take care of their homes. And so in this case, I think that gaming is culture. It is entertainment in many ways. If you think about some of the top shows in the world right now, they are games that turned into TV series or movies. And
Fallout number 1
I think
on
that
Amazon.
Fallout's number two of all time. Minecraft was number 5 at the box office when it came out. So it just feels like the world is going through such a change, and it's a consequential time, and we've got great people working on AI to help enable every enterprise, and I wanted to take on something that could help the world continue to be entertained and help them play.
The thing with that message is that with everything that she's had even in the past, the focus has been the people that it affects. I don't know if most people catch that, but that is unlike, I feel like, most, again, CEOs and people in the game publishing space. Again, it's all about what the people and customers can do for the company, and not really what the company can do for the customers. And so I feel like she has this completely different perspective than a lot of the others. And two, she didn't feel like she was necessarily right for this job. And so I got to thank Satya Nadella too for maybe moving pieces around, getting rid of um, Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer, or with how things shook out. Maybe Sarah left on her own. We're not sure. But I think Asha has been a good choice so far. And we got to thank Satya Nadella for that.
So let's talk about the numbers. Gaming revenue last quarter was $5.3 billion, down from 5.7 a year earlier. Hardware revenue down 33%. The Switch 2 and PS5 are outselling Xbox by some metrics. When you walked in on day one and looked at it, what was the most uncomfortable thing you saw?
Look, the gaming industry is going through a hard time. It's not unlike any other consumer industry with when COVID hit, demand pulled forward and then, growth slowed after that. And in our case, we were not immune to that and we have not been immune to that. I think the last generation product has particularly been a hard time. I think the most uncomfortable and surprising thing for me is what is happening in consumer electronics that we're not really talking about. I think that usually what happens at this point in a generation is your costs come down, right? Memory, storage, et cetera. Well, with AI, memory and storage costs are going up 2.75x rather than 50% down. Just in my first 100 days, it's up 50%, and I think it will continue to go up. And so the biggest challenge and opportunity is how do you make affordable products during that time? And that's what the next 100 days will be about.
So
what she just said about cost, again, I've mentioned this before, and no, I don't think it's our responsibility to take on the increasing cost of companies, but for her to share that, 2.7 times what it was, and even just within the last 100 days that she's been here, it's already gone up an extra 50%. Now, it will plateau. It's starting to feel like maybe it's actually doing that, which is good, but the sheer cost, man, the cost has been going up for a while. And yeah, she recognizes that consumer electronics are just not headed in a good place, and so that's drastically affecting the customers.
Project Helix, the next Xbox. Can you show me how big it's going to be, like with your hands, maybe?
No.
All right. But for this to pay off, it's going to have to be pretty expensive for all of the reasons that you just mentioned. Do gamers still care enough to shell out that much?
I think it's expensive if we do not innovate, and I came to help that problem. I think that, look, it is natural that prices go up. Every generation around us is raising prices, but I don't think you can raise prices through the hardware crisis that we're seeing, and so it will require a fundamental change in terms of how we innovate and how we think about the business models and how we go bring this to market, and we're working on that.
So yeah, this is really good because she understands that the affordability is basically not there for players, and the next 100 days she's going to be working on figuring that out. And yeah, she understands that they can't really raise prices. This is why she worked on lowering Game Pass Ultimate prices on console from $30 to $23. It's not back to 20, but that's still a step in the right direction. And then also, while it wasn't talked about, PC Game Pass went from $16.50 to $14 a month. So again, it's not 12, but that's still a step in the right direction. And I'm glad that she understands that she needs to innovate, that they need to do things a little bit differently in order for Xbox to make money and be profitable, while also making it affordable for players like you and I. And I think even with Phil Spencer and Sarah Bond, they already understood that with some of the things that they talked about when people didn't believe them back then, that the competition was just getting too expensive, that there were too many options out there, and it was difficult for revenue to actually come in. And so that's why we were expanding Game Pass. That's why we were having day one games. That's why we have Play Anywhere, where basically you buy the game once, but you have all of the versions available to you outside of Game Pass to play and own as a license, which is great. They just give them all to you, which is wonderful. And so, yeah, I think they already saw that, and yeah, I think she will continue to push forward on that front. So, and I want to say too, this is actually why a lot of people have been going over to Steam and PC, is because while the initial cost is a lot, Once you have it, you have cheaper games, you have more options, there's a lot more discounts, you don't have to pay for online. You can upgrade components as you need instead of buying a whole new piece of hardware again. And yeah, with the upcoming cost of next gen for PlayStation 6 and Helix, it's going to be a lot of money. We're probably looking at 1,000 or like 1,000 plus. And then we even know too that even with Nintendo, they're raising costs of hardware a little bit, and that's already had massive effects over in Japan. I mean, they raised it basically the equivalent of 62 USD, and 87% of their sales fell off the next week. That is pretty remarkable. So that's not a massive cost necessarily, but man, what do you think is going to happen here when that price hike for the Switch 2 takes effect in the United States, even though it's just $50? I mean, that's a tank of gas now for a lot of people.
Do you think Xbox is still selling consoles mainly in 2030?
So look, the console market is stable and it's core to who we are, but at the same time, there's a lot of other growing markets. And so we're certainly going to continue to put out great reference experiences, but we're also going to push into new spaces. Microsoft owns Windows. Windows is one of the largest gaming platforms in the world. It has long had more players and more hours than any other platform. And I think it's going to have a lot of dollars associated with that in the future too. Mobile, we own Candy Crush. We have incredible worlds and characters that can meet the next generation where they are. And so, look, I look at console as core, and I look at our responsibility to not only serve that really well and get that healthy, but to also look at bringing the next generation online.
The Switch 2 is
So yeah, again, they are going to continue to focus, and this is why I don't believe Xbox is going to do exclusivity, is because the money's not there in exclusivity. She knows, they're going to continue to focus on trying to make and bring back what Xbox is. We've seen a lot of those kind of like behind the scenes changes, or logo changes, or prices on the front on prices and stuff. We've seen some of the changes too, with just some of the stuff we've been asking for a long time. So it's nice to have that. But she also knows that the future is not just going to be console still. And maybe some form of exclusivity is going to come back. But again, people are going to focus on where access is, where the most bang for their buck is going to be. And I think that's what she's trying to continue to focus on.
having a huge year. What are your learnings from the first generation of Xbox handhelds? And would you ever build your own, or do you not need that category?
Look, I think that there's a lot of interesting things to think about when it comes to how do you actually meet players where they are. I think handheld is just a way to take your games on the go with you, and so that can happen on mobile. That can happen on with Asus, which is our partner on handhelds. That can happen on all gaming handhelds. I think what's clear is the next generation plays a lot, and they see play as the most important form of entertainment to them. And a console is great when you're at home, and we're going to have to look for other ways to help serve that audience.
One of the most controversial things you did, first few weeks on the job, you kill Copilot in gaming. Satya has literally said multiple times, Microsoft is a Copilot company, Microsoft's trying to put Copilot into everything. How hard was it to make that call? And what did he have to say about it?
So, look, one of the first commitments I made was future of play. And I said, look, we're not going to we're going to be really thoughtful about how we ship AI. My job is to think about where we invest, what we prioritize, and how we operate. And our console players aren't excited about that experience in their console. Now, do I believe in AI? Absolutely. I think neural rendering is a great opportunity for us to invest in that. It helps upscale. It's helping with the footprint on your device so you can get better graphics. There's a lot of things that AI can be really great at. I think that we have to make sure it's solving a problem if we put it out there for gaming. And so I made that call.
That is so wonderful to hear, that like the AI has to be able to do something, kind of like have this utility or bring something to the table, not just actually be there as another thing to just exist. And so, and I'm glad too that the future of play is what she's committed to, and she's focused on what the player base wants, not necessarily what Satya Nadella wants. And I'm excited for that. And I think too, Satya Nadella maybe realizes, with all of the pushing that he had, I think too, with all of the pushing that Satya Nadella did when Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer were in power, is that he was kind of basically being the head of Xbox, turned into Microsoft Gaming, all of this other stuff, and yeah, his push is what kind of created some of this doublespeak that we had. With Phil Spencer, and then literally, a week or days or a few months later, totally the opposite direction. And I think Satya Nadella had too much of a hand in it. So I'm glad that she is having latitude to do what she wants to do what she thinks is best. And Satya Nadella is so far letting her do it. How long is that going to happen? I don't know. The numbers are going to have to perform, and I think she knows that. But she's also never really been at a company for more than like 4 years. So yeah, she's already making a lot of moves in her first 100 days, and looking forward. Again, the next 100 days are more like affordability. So yeah, we'll see how she does with that.
Satya was cool with that, or
It was an Xbox decision. He's given me latitude to make the best decisions for our players.
well, how much latitude elsewhere do you have? There's this idea that Microsoft wants to sort of extract software kind of revenues out of a gaming business, which may not be possible. Do you have more breathing room when it comes to the financials?
Yeah, so my mandate is not 30% accountability margin. It's not enterprise software margins. It's to be the #1 gaming and entertainment company, and that's what we're going to go do. If you think about it, Microsoft has invested more aggressively than nearly anybody in this category over the last 6 years. We've bought Activision and ZeniMax. We've invested in our core platform. We've invested in hardware cycles. We invest in subsidies even when we're losing money because of memory and storage. And so we're long on gaming. We're long on Xbox. We'll keep investing, but we've got work to do. You shared the numbers. We're not in a healthy spot. And so, next 100 days is going to be about resetting the business.
Let's talk about Activision. Microsoft paid $70 billion, $69 billion for Activision Blizzard, largest gaming acquisition in history. There have been layoffs, game cancellations, Game Pass prices have gone up rather than down. You inherited this deal. Is it paying off?
So look, I don't know anybody in entertainment who wouldn't want Call of Duty, which is now grossing in more revenue than Marvel Cinematic Universe, who wouldn't want one of the top 3 apps in the world, Candy Crush, who wouldn't want World of Warcraft, and who wouldn't want a team that for 20 years has been able to create predictable hits every single year. So I love Activision Blizzard King. Look, it was bought at a time before ChatGPT. It was bought at a time before our strategy, when our strategy was predominantly on the core console. It was at a time when we were right in the middle of COVID. So hard to say how to think about those decisions, but I think these are incredible assets, and we intend to continue to invest in them.
Speaking to what she just said, they have not made hits every single time. There's also plenty of IP under Activision that is not accessible to plenty of players, or any players for that matter. Also, too, they have bought in some of those other IPs and studios and publishers like ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard. But I think the reason they bought those was not because of a quote-unquote strategy, simple, but for the fact to just make sure that they can actually have games coming to Xbox. But yeah, I don't think, again, with all of that money, it was kind of like after Activision Blizzard, the focus of the console and Xbox and what Xbox is was no longer really a focus. And so I do think that 30% mandate maybe was there, or there at least was pressure, because we've had the canceled games, we've had the price increases across everything on Xbox, just like every other company, and we've also had the closing of studios and layoffs. And it hasn't been pretty. It hasn't been pretty at all. And yeah, when you're spending that much money, again, it is a further future investment kind of an idea, but yeah, it hasn't gone perfect. So I think she's a little wrong on that. Because, yeah, it hasn't been perfect hits all the time. It hasn't created amazing revenue. There's been lots of games that haven't been amazing hits. They were expected to be, but they weren't. And I think Starfield is a good example. I think Call of Duty is a good example. For the last 6 years for COD, it's been hit or miss depending on the game. And I've had reviews of my own for those CODs. And, yeah, the stuff they've done with Warcraft or with what Blizzard has done, Man, yeah, it has been very frustrating. So, yeah, I don't think she's right on that.
Well, not one of your games, but Grand Theft Auto 6 is expected to be pretty big, outsell.
I'm very impressed you know these things.
I do have a 13-year-old son, as
Yeah.
I said. Expected to outsell any game, movie, or album in history. You delayed Fable in part in anticipation of this. What impact do you think this game is going to have on the industry? Like, do you see this as kind of a litmus test?
I think it's just one of the most important parts of culture at this point, and we want to make sure that we're fully supporting it. And so I'm excited to see how it does. I'm excited for the reactions. I'm excited to learn from it.
So the players didn't want Copilot, but how do you see AI changing gaming and game development in the future? Like, where does and doesn't AI belong when it comes to games?
Look, I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking about is how do we just make sure it's solving problems. On the game development side, I've gone to a lot of our studios, big and small, and I'm blown away with how they're using AI in the production pipelines, how they're using it for iteration and prototyping. Look, that's not production ready, there's still work. And 30% of game development is software, and so there's the traditional applications that we see in enterprise. At the same time, I do not think AI will replace AAA games. I think it's entirely possible, though, that AI represents a new category of games and a new type of development and enables more people to create and participate. And we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see how we best serve that.
Your biggest competitor.
So already what she's admitting there, and this too is like companies are just no longer saying it, I believe too, but that AI is already being used basically in every single game. And so, as I said before in previous vids last year and this year, it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But she does recognize that the human element is still necessary, that 30% of the whole process is software, and that AI can be a useful tool. But as she said before, with like Copilot, with Xbox, is that Copilot, has to have a utility, and the AI too that is being used in these studios also has to have a utility. It's not just there to use to make Satya Nadella happy, and I'm glad that she has the ability to do that and exercise that. And while I think AI can be a useful tool, I also don't think that AI should be trying to replace people. And I think some publishers are trying to do that. And I do think, yes, it has led to layoffs. I know of some people personally that have lost their jobs to art design or to the tech space a little bit because of AI, because, well, that is some of the work being passed off to something else, and it is getting rid of their jobs, and so you need less people, and I think that sucks. But I'm glad to hear that she doesn't like want to be like an AI first company, okay, like Crafton or some of the others. Is that she's again wanting the focus to still be about games and about people making games, because yeah, games are a human element, and I think too so much of what we're experiencing in video games feels so corporate. It feels inhuman. It's just very regimented and mechanical, and just there's not a lot of soul to it. And I think that's why too, whether PlayStation, whether Xbox, or even right now, whether Nintendo, the exclusives and the games coming out have been good or okay. Some have been bad across the board, but none of them, almost none of them, are great. And I think that's why exclusivity right now cannot come back, because again, there's not enough money. People are willing to pay $70 for a game like Resident Evil Requiem, right, or like $40 for a game like Helldivers, or $60 for Helldivers or some others. But again, it has to be a really, really, really good game. And yeah, something else that she mentioned is that allowing more people to actually make games and be competitive in the space because of AI. And so the choice is going to be better for us, but the choice is going to be harder for companies going forward, because the more options that there are, the less likely customers are to spend their money on their products. And so they got to be more competitive. And so, yeah, I think the 2030s is going to be really good for gaming going forward. But boy, we got to get through this kind of monogamous mess of just, hey, it's worked before, let's do it again. And yeah, that's well, it has been creating a problem. I'll just say it that way.
There's used to be, or maybe still are, Sony and Nintendo, but I don't know now. Is it Roblox or Netflix or TikTok? Like, who keeps you up at night?
Honestly, I think our biggest competition is attention. Right now, the next generation's number one thing they want to do is play. So we've got that going for us. But the way that they consume is really different. They want it wherever they are. They want it in shorter bites. They want to be able to customize. They want an open ecosystem. They want a lot of different things than our core user base. And so what's great is we have the characters in the world and the technology to be the best in the world and serve who we're serving. And we're going to have to invent new things to serve the next generation.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. The younger generations do not care about exclusivity. She just named, by looking at data, what they're interested in. Open ecosystem, being able to customize their experience or have more options. That's not exclusivity, guys. I don't think it's coming back the way we think it is.
We talked about Fallout and, your characters showing up in theme parks and movies. I waited in line for a really long time to go on a ride at Universal Studios. Like, it's, is Xbox a gaming business with an entertainment side hustle, or are you an IP company?
I think at the end of the day, gaming is entertainment. And so I look at us as, at the core, we have to create great games. People spend 70 billion hours a year with us, and that gives us the right and the permission to then have great shows, have these great, theme parks, have these great attractions. I don't think you can do that in reverse. And so at the core, we will always think about how do we make great games, and then increasingly, as people want to experience those worlds and characters outside of that, that's great, as long as it's authentic to that audience.
You just hired Matthew Ball, one of the most influential gaming analysts in the industry. I've interviewed him many times. He is very critical. He's been very critical of Xbox's mistakes in particular. What are you hoping he tells you that others aren't?
Look, we're a challenger right now, and so we have to be uncomfortable and understand hard truths, and I think he's going to help us do that. At the same time, he's one of the most creative people that I've met. I don't think that there is a linear path to success here. I think we need to take all of the learnings across entertainment, across gaming, across all of our collective histories. We have a lot of very tenured gaming leaders that are still on the leadership team, and we're going to need to find our way through it, and I think he's going to help us do that.
So you've been labeled as not a gamer, but I know you have a gamer tag. Do you game now, and how much time do you spend fiddling around with it?
Yes, I'm not a gamer, but I do play games now because that is our core way that we reach our audience. And so, again, in my first 100 days, I've been trying to learn and listen and understand what makes this art form amazing. And what's interesting is there's a lot of people who are gamers that you never would have known until you start to pick up a controller. And so there's something about that. Look, when in a world in which everybody's attempting to automate the economy, there's something wonderful to just be able to escape and have memories and connect to something that you deeply care about and that's deeply personal, and I think that's what games do.
What do you think the future of exclusivity is? And, for example, with Game Pass and, the comparisons to Netflix, is it really going to get there? Where is all that going?
I think it's a tough topic. Look, we're the #2 publisher in the world, and in order to be a great publisher, you must have your games reach large audiences to play. At the same time, we're increasingly becoming a platform. In order to be a platform, you must have exclusive content and services. And so we're looking at that very closely. I think that we have to be very thoughtful about each title on how we want to think about it and learn from similar cases in the industry. And that's what we're doing.
What are the...
So yeah, again, exclusivity I don't think is going to be the way that we think it is. Because again, when we look at Xbox revenue from 2018 to now, it's gone up basically 2.5 times of what it was. They were averaging roughly 9 billion a year, and now they're around 22, 23 billion, which is huge. So they're not going to say no to that revenue, right? but that doesn't mean that some things won't be exclusive. Okay, like and creating their new ecosystem. Again, it's not just creating a new console; it's creating a new ecosystem. And I think again, the stuff that Phil and Sarah have built already, I don't believe is going away. But she is going to focus on what makes Xbox Xbox and kind of having that there core to the players for us OGs that have already been playing games for 30 years. And for the others that are getting into the space, she's also going to make sure that they're taken care of too. So she's got like a dual mandate: the people that have already been here for a long time and those that are coming in. And that's how they're going to facilitate growth and also keep their revenue up so that they can keep making and doing things. Now, speaking to Michael Ball, I honestly wanted to do his report, but it was 300 pages. I just haven't had the time to just pour through that because once I start, I'm not stopping. It's probably going to be a 2 or 3 hour stream just going through that report. But it does show a lot of insights, so I do eventually want to get to it. But yeah, but yeah, he is very data driven guy, and so I'm actually very glad that they hired him. Now, he also thinks that some things that I don't agree with. But again, we'll deal with that when he's actually kind of in the forefront having some interviews. We'll probably look at those too. But yeah, let's hear what the next 100 days are going to look like.
Well, I think the first 100 days are going to be hard to beat in terms of the excitement, but the next 100 days is, look, we've done so much to start to revive Xbox. We've shipped more in the last 100 days than we have in the last year. We've been able to reset Game Pass after an 8-month decline. It's now returned to growth and expanding revenue retention. And most importantly, we're starting to get back to being closer to our players and our community. I think the next 100 days, we have to reset the business. We need to look at how we're investing, how we're prioritizing, change how we operate in order to return to growth, in order to be where the world plays.
So it's 2030. You've had 4 years to run Xbox. What does success look like? What is true about Xbox that isn't true today?
I'd love to see us be the #1 gaming and entertainment company.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So yeah, I'm very excited about what she's doing. I've been very skeptical. I said that in previous vids, but she's been proving that she's focusing on the customers and that she's seeing them as customers. She's not seeing them necessarily as consumers, and I really appreciate that. She's also understands that AI needs to be a tool that has utility. It is not just there to use. And Satya Nadella is getting out of the way so that she can make these changes and actually focus on the business. So yeah, this is wonderful. This is very good. In the next 100 days, again, is going to be about the players. She already said earlier that it's going to be about affordability. And yeah, with what she's doing so far, while I may not agree with everything from now or into the future, I really appreciate her looking at the business and seeming to put customers first. I think it's wonderful. What do you guys think? Leave it down in the comments. I'm also frustrated too with Nishino and Holst. Maybe I should talk about that at some point, but I know we have a fireside chat coming in a few months, and so maybe I should just wait then. But anyway, but yeah, I'm frustrated because it's just the legacy of live service is just kind of moving forward. Trying to pay for exclusivity is still being used, and I feel like they're just running the same playbook, and they're still not innovating, and that's very frustrating for PlayStation 5 players. And that's very frustrating for people also looking at what PlayStation used to be with all of the games that they had, with how we felt about consumers and as customers. And I think this is why too people want exclusivity to come back, because they simply want to have that feeling again of feeling important or feeling like they belong to something that's good for the ultimate space in the community and stuff, and is a good product. But again, we have to be able to see where things are at now, and I think that's why hiring Michael Ball is going to be is a good idea, because things are changing. Things are never going to be the same. That's why exclusivity, like we grew up with, I believe, is never coming back. And these companies are having to shift and change things because that model hasn't been working, and they're all having to do that. Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox, and so yeah, things are going to be different going forward. But yeah, I do think they're going to focus on their ecosystems as their platforms. It's not just going to be console anymore, and Xbox is just doing it first because they were in last place, and that's going to be, I think, a benefit to them. It already has been, because yeah, you don't make 22, $23 billion in a year for not doing what people want. Go ahead and leave comments on what you think, and this whole mess, and yeah, I'll respond to them, and let's all try to be respectful here. So with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.